He said Angela and Miss Cross. What?
You picked the right one, lady, because I wish I had that microphone.
Budget is top of mind from you right now.
Whatever axe is swinging is going to eventually hit us.
The gap between the rich and poor is only going to be exacerbated by what they're doing in this bill.
They plan to have kick us in that right after they compete to hold the House, hold the Senate, and of course the presidency.
We're talking about Diddy and other people like him who engage in behavior and the women who they harm.
I mean, I'm sensing conflict all over. My own thoughts about some of this, right?
My only notion was we have to give a like we just do. It's our humanity.
Donald Trump saying that someone committed this crime does not make it so.
Just miss me with the white woman.
He's trying to hide. He think with bullets about to fly. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. Welcome home, y'all. This is episode 86 of Native Land Pod, where we give you our breakdown of all things politics and culture. We have a lot going on in the world right now. I'm with my co-hosts, Tiffany Cross and Andrew Gillum. I'm Angela Rye. Y'all, what do you want to talk about today?
Well, as you said, Angela, there is a lot going on in the world and the news today. Budget is top of mind from you right now. And I'm also interested in us possibly weighing into this big verdict that came down this week. Maybe we can, at least amongst the three of us, help our listeners sort of navigate this strange land we're in.
The verdict you're referencing, of course, is the verdict in the Sean Puffy Combs trial that came down on Wednesday. So definitely will join you there. But what I'm most interested in talking about is our viewer questions, because we have a few viewer questions this week, and we've asked you all to submit your questions. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to submit them. So we want to get to those.
And I want to just highlight briefly, or maybe it's a low light from a low life, something that your president said about how he intends to handle United States citizens who have committed crimes. Maybe if they've committed crimes. So we'll get into all of that and much more. Welcome home, y'all.
My name is Dr. Charity Oyedeji. I'm a hematologist and researcher focused on improving care for people with sickle cell disease. I received a notice on June 16, 2025, that my K Award, a 5-year, $750,000 federal NIH grant to improve care for people with sickle cell disease as they age, was suddenly and unjustly terminated despite strong scientific evidence and early proven results. The termination notice stated that research with equity objectives does nothing to expand our knowledge of living systems and are quote-unquote low return on investment and don't enhance health, and also are harmful to Americans. These statements are inaccurate and disrespectful for so many reasons. Sickle cell disease is a painful, life-limiting genetic disorder that can be inherited by people of all racial and ethnic backgrounds around the world. Sickle cell disease primarily affects Black people in the United States. My research was focused on developing the first and only functional assessment and the first and only exercise program tailored to the unique needs of older adults with sickle cell disease called SickleFit. Ending this project not only silences promising solutions for a neglected group of patients, but also sends a devastating message to future researchers that even life-changing, evidence-based science can be discarded without cause. My question is, what can be done to overcome these grant terminations, and how do researchers doing impactful work for underserved populations find a way forward? Thank you.
First, thank you to the doctor for taking time to submit that question, and just thank you for listening and posing such a good question. Sickle cell, as she said, disproportionately impacts Black folks. And so I don't have a good understanding of how what's been happening from a policy perspective will impact that. But there is certainly a lens of humanity to view this through.
The frustrating part about this, ladies, is there's already not enough research done on the diseases that have unique impact on our community. I'm reflecting on the doctor's question, which had so many, I'm the first and only, researching in this, and we'll provide the first and only to this. And for that to be just ceremoniously and quite harmfully, not factually dismantled, is crazy. As she read some of the words from the letter that she received, I was thinking, what AI bot from Donald Trump's government produced this letter as filled with inaccuracies as it was? And I can only imagine the doctor's frustration. I will just say, and Angela, you probably have a more direct maybe way forward for her here, but these were dollars that were already appropriated by the Congress. Remember, the Congress is the appropriator in our system of government. Signed into law by a president. These were dollars that were already determined to where they were supposed to go. The government just needed to write the check, send the direct deposit, whatever it is that they do. And Donald Trump then held that up. I know that a number of agencies that have been impacted financially by some of these early decisions have decided to go to court and sue to have that money come through for them. I don't know if that's the route for the doctor or if there are other suits that she can potentially join onto. But I believe that there is still grounds here for litigation and for the third branch of government to help make some sense of this thing, that how does a budget get passed, signed into law, appropriations made, and the check gets stopped by Donald Trump and never delivered for the life-saving and groundbreaking research that it was intended?
Absolutely. I think what is timely about this is this administration is doing that all the time. There was a release that came out this week that said that the Department of Education withheld school funding to the tune of $6.9 billion that was already allocated and supposed to be sent from the Department of Education, which you all know now is, in the works of being dismantled. And I think what's most important is as we're on this podcast, the Congressional Black Caucus is holding the floor through a UC process, trying to get unanimous consent is what UC stands for a Democratic amendment on Donald Trump's budget, which he's named the Big Beautiful Bill. We've called it the Big Ugly Bill. We've called it Trump's Bad BBL. All of the things. We've had a marathon since Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, deconstructing this bill that causes great harm. Lolo has brought up her health condition, talked about it on the marathon yesterday. And what we need to understand is that $1.3 trillion is going to be reallocated from Medicaid and SNAP and other programs to support people who are considered the least of these, if we are to use biblical terms, and frankly, just moved over, transferred to the wealthiest Americans among us, the top 20%. And I think that when you consider that,
who just bought
it's actually people with less money than that. But when you look at the gap between the folks who are in six figures, and in the bottom half of that 20%, and the folks who are in the lower rung of the economy making under $30,000 a year, the bottom 20%, it is astounding. Yeah. And the gap between the rich and poor is only going to be exacerbated by what they're doing in this bill. And I think the worst thing is, we keep giving people these high hopes that we're going to be able to change their minds, that we're going to be able to appeal to the inner moral compass of Senator so-and-so. Earlier this week, it was Lisa Murkowski, who we knew was not going to pivot. And so we keep telling people, if you apply pressure, they will do the right thing. Will they? There's a list of 20-something members in the House of Representatives who people have been asked to call. And I'm at the point right now where I am tired of asking people to take all of their good intention, attention, efforts, and put them into a futile fight for people who only care about doing what is right for the people who write them campaign contributions and to appease Nebuchadnezzar, who is Donald Trump. No, they don't care about anybody else. And I would rather us be very clear-eyed about what we do have. So we've spent just as much time on this marathon educating about the harmful impacts of this bill. Do you know how many people in this country don't even know this is happening?
Many.
And it is the most harmful legislation that will be passed in modern history.
Greatest transfer of wealth.
So we got to spend just as much. But what does that mean? Like when we use these terms, people don't know what the largest transfer of wealth means. It means they are literally stealing money from programs that will pay doctors so that your kid who has asthma can be seen, even if you are not on Medicaid. Once the accounts are jacked, we had doctors on talking about this. Once they fiddle with those accounts and there's no money at this community health center in Jackson, Mississippi, or wherever, and there's no Medicaid to support that, there's nothing to close that gap, it shuts down. And we have to be honest about that. So instead of all of your efforts being in call your member, which you still should, ask this member of Congress to change their mind, soften their hearts, you still should. Maybe the most vulnerable of the GOP can find some commonality with the most vulnerable Americans. But if you can't, what is the community resource that already exists that we can tell people about?
The direct advice for the question would be litigation, because I think we're just at a place where folks are exhausting every available option to them to see the right thing happen. And the truth is that if we had a Congress that was willing to stand up for its own power, for its own position, for its own voice on behalf of the 600,000 plus people each member of Congress represents across this country, we wouldn't have an issue here. Unfortunately, we have feckless members of the Republican Party who, I don't care what the outlet is, I have watched the media be completely derelict of late as it has described this budget, giving people the false hopes that Senator such and such is going to come in to save the day because the president has hardliners on the right who are not going to be for adding this much debt to the debt limit of the country. Not true. I wish that instead of saying that there were holdout Republicans, that they would say that there are Republicans who consider themselves holdout, but in keeping with the last 10 votes, they have caved every single time. They have held themselves out there as being responsive to the citizens that they represent. They're fully aware that rural hospitals in the states that they represent are going to shutter, impacting all people, right? The majority of this country does not live in highly populated urbanized cities. They don't. The majority of folks are spread out all over this vast land, many of them not with the access to the kinds of tools, resources, and human resources in the form of doctors, nurses, specialists that they need access to. And if you tell them to reach those folks over the internet through telemedicine, you're going to have to go further to inspect whether or not there is a strong enough signal of internet in the communities that they live to get them in touch with a doctor where a seamless conversation can take place. The fallout from this bill is going to be tremendous, Angela, and I appreciate you putting, again, real light on this. I do think that that pressure does burst pipes. I think we have to apply pressure, and pressure comes in many forms. But more than anything, what these members of Congress are the math that they are doing is they're calculating Donald Trump and his how do you say, get back evil spirit to the 600,000 to 800,000 of you who live in their district. And they are choosing the voice of this one man over all 600,000 to 800,000 of you. And he's saying that this voice is much more important to me and my future as an elected official than all of y'all combined who send me to Washington in the first place. That's the math that they're doing. And we all ought to be offended and ashamed that we have members of Congress there representing us who have no interest in taking our voices to the floor of the Congress, to the well of the Congress, or by God, representing that voice through their vote.
Really quick, Andrew, I want to just respond to two things factually. We have members of Congress who don't have the majority and have limited tools, especially on the House side. And the tools they are using or have used. The magic minute with Hakeem Jeffries.
Yes, the Democratic
the unanimous
minority.
consent.
Yes.
Hold up. Yeah, very, very much so in the minority, even though they might have the moral majority. But I wanted to say two things. The first was I just wanted to apologize to you. I think that I have been so much in a bubble around State of the People and the Power Tour and it was a good, safe, feel-good bubble, completely dissociated with what is happening, from this madman, was able to just get out and see how many tools we have for ourselves to take care of ourselves. when you kept bringing up the budget for weeks, that is something that we need to talk about. That is something we need to talk about. I just had no interest, you know, and I think now in the 11th hour, in part because I'm like, he's breaking all the rules and the laws anyway. So like, what difference does it make? And still honestly feel a little of that. But I know we have a collective obligation to tell our people what is on the line. And I don't know if some of it is holdover from November, just feeling like, well, like what use is it to tell people what to do if they're not going to do it? If they call their member of Congress and the member of Congress has a phone on D&D, they literally have their phones on Do Not Disturb right now. To get to their members, they have to send a social post. It is a dereliction of duty without like absolute dereliction of duty. And so I did want to apologize because I know the public servant in you would still have us to do the right thing, which we should do. And so I don't want to speak for Tiff, but I want to say I apologize because I think that we should have given this time probably every week, even if it's just to highlight a portion of the bill. And I'll say, like, as long as I have any say in it, I will yield from now on, even when I am in a bubble. And I'm asking you to please take full permission to say, sis, I think you're in a bubble on this. We're missing it. And to sound the alarm. So I just wanted to apologize
I'll just say,
for that.
I know you don't, it's not necessary because every piece of our labor from all of us and the listeners who are choosing to touch and engage, even to take care during this moment, are contributing to what we have to do to sustain. And so what you were doing with the tour was incredibly important to our bigger long-term structure of how do we wake up our communities to know that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. That this has to start at that basic of a level in order for us to suspend with that belief that what is it all for? He's going to do what he's going to do anyway. Because the truth is, this pressure does burst pipes. And there's going to be some accountability on his side, but don't let it be us checking out. That is the permission structure for him doing whatever it is that he want to do. We're always going to check in, tap in to make sure that if you're going to get there, brother, you're going to burn down every bush, every tree, every limb, run over every house, every person to get there. Do you want that wreckage?
I just want to say quickly, Angela said she didn't want to speak for me, but like Angela said last week, Angela speaks for me even when we disagree. So I echo those thoughts. I just, your former boss, Angela, Congressman Benny Thompson, has been on rural hospitals, legislation supporting rural hospitals for decades, for a really long time. And we're looking at losing over 300. And despite the media constantly saying, rural, the white is silent because they often, when they go out and talk to the rural folks, they don't often look like us, but a significant portion of Black people live in rural areas.
Absolutely.
So I think this idea that people are a bit disengaged and they don't know this is happening, this will literally cost lives. Rural hospitals have, I think, 25 acute care beds. So this means when there's no bed for someone, they don't have space to be there. If they have to get airlifted, they may not have the resources to be there. In terms of reimbursement, they're going to have limited reimbursement for the hospitals that do remain open. And just with respect to the budget, I'm at a bit of a disadvantage here because even this conversation now, it's meaty. It's information. I hope that people got information from what Angela and Andrew shared. I don't know that people tune into things like this. If we're going through the budget and talking about it, for me, that's something I want to listen to. I think you do have to dangle sometimes the salacious in front of people. You have to make it so simple. And in all of our bubbles, I think there is a disconnect sometimes.
That's okay.
We all are in different bubbles, but there is a disconnect. And I don't want to shit on people who are like, I didn't even know the big bill was happening. But sometimes I do have a frustration. I would argue most of the country has no idea that this bill is happening.
That's what the data says, Tiff. Yes. They have no idea.
And they're not tuning in. And so it's like, how do you find that balance of giving, news by definition is informing people of what they need to know and talking about what they want to know. So striking that balance, I think the journalism industry in large, as y'all know, hear me talk about, has failed. Because even when I heard on all the networks this week talking about it, they're playing these political games. So you get a Republican on or you get a Democrat on and you're like, what impact do you think this will have? Are you trying to play this up to win midterms? Are you guys attacking Vice President J.D. Vance because you think he's going to run? Are you trying to? And it's like, who gives a shit? This is why people don't know what's going on, because we're trafficking in this kind of BS. I wanted to say that about the disconnect, because if you guys don't mind, I want to get to this viewer question. Who it's kind of, I'm going to relate it back to the bill. And Angela, I'm sure you can find a way to relate it back to the bill, because people have some smoke for me and Angela. And I just...
Before we get to the viewer question, I want to say, Tiff, I agree with you. This Republican versus Democrat thing on air is irresponsible, but they are modeling what they're seeing in Congress. Literally, Lindsey Graham, who's the chair of the budget committee, put out a statement lying to people about the fact that this would expand access to Medicaid and Medicare. Hyping up these budget cuts and how it's going to help America's economy and working families. Just blatant lies, to the point where Susan Collins put out her own statement saying what it actually did. They're in direct conflict. So you don't even have to leave their party to get an alternative story. The other thing I was going to say is, you said that we need to make it more salacious, and I was going to say maybe not the salacious,
but that's what gets people to pay attention.
What gets people? That's true. Okay, I got you. So I didn't mean to misquote. So the salacious is what gets people to pay attention. My highest hope is, and it's one of the things we've been doing throughout the marathon, which is still going by the time we record this podcast. We have asked people to lead with their who. Why are you doing this? Who are you doing it for? Where do they live? What is their story? Mine was my mom. We were sitting at my mom, just went back to chemo. We went and I said, Mommy, would you mind being on camera? I want people to see, when Medicare is even just your supplemental insurance, who this impacts. It impacts a widespread, diverse, economically from a region. We are in Seattle at the best cancer hospital, in one of the best cancer hospitals in the country. My mom's Medicare is going to be impacted. So I think that it may not be the salacious, but it is certainly the story. And I think that it's something that is needed both to move the needle, to the point that Andrew raised about pressure bursting pipes, to ensure that people know who they're accountable for. Don't let them forget the face. Don't let them forget the face of who this will hit, whether it's that child on CHIP, or it is that elder on Medicare, or it is a person that may not even don't even know they're on Medicaid, because Medicaid is called something else in your state. Do not let them forget. And so, again, Andrew,
can I just jump in? Let me just jump in really quickly and say, you talked about the child on CHIP. Just so our viewers know, CHIP is the Children's Health Insurance Program. A lot of children will be impacted by that. And Angela, I hear you saying that they're playing off what's happening in Congress, but to me, that is the failure. Like, you are letting members of Congress drive the narrative, and members of Congress should be who you're holding responsible. It doesn't matter what statement Lindsey Graham put out. Like, you're the reporter, like, you hold him. And I just want to say something else. We talked about Senator Lisa Murkowski, who is a Republican representative from Alaska. And I just want to say she is a feckless, horrid human being. And the reason I say that is because if maybe you guys saw this, maybe you didn't, a few months ago, she talked about, and the media celebrated her for this. She talked about, well, we're scared. Donald Trump is in office and we're scared to do the right thing. But I, Lisa Murkowski, will do the right thing. So this is why what this bitch say don't really matter to me. And I'm using my language very intentional when I'm talking about her. One, she's taller, and she tends to be a really disrespectful woman when confronted by the media. Like, CNN's Manu Raju had a confrontation with her where she was like towering over him. I forget the reporter's name, but this week a CNN reporter confronted her saying, you're selling out, Senator Rand Paul said you're selling out the American people just to bail out Alaska, or I may be misquoting that. And she tried to have a staring contest with him.
Stare down.
And I'm You picked the right one, lady, because I wish I had that microphone. Don't speak first. Let her stand there and look dumb. So every time you will hear Lisa Murkowski as being like middle of the road and she can work with Democrats, we hear the same thing about Susan Collins. They are your typical 53, 52% MAGA Republicans who will say, I don't like what Donald Trump does, but I'm going to vote with his 98, 99% of the time. We're never going to appeal
Well, this
to those
was
people.
Susan Collins 1% because she finally did the right thing here, but it took a lot of pressure to the point of what Andrew's
And
raised.
she's let us down so many times before. So she may not have voted on this bill. 50%.
50. No, I was going to say 50%. I mean, 50%. 50 other people, though, voted with Lisa Murkowski.
Yeah, this is my point.
Including J.D. Vance. So no matter what.
Just miss me with the white woman. She's a hero and she said she's scared and she's doing the right thing. I'm so tired of that narrative. Our Black members of Congress are pretty much dismissed in all their efforts. But this random ass see you next Tuesday is out here talking out the side of her neck and gets excused for it, and it drives me crazy. Anyway, Andrew lied about a production timeout, just trying to get the mic.
In. I just wanted to sympathize.
Well, can you say what you got to
point.
say and then toss to the viewer question after?
I absolutely will. This is simply to say, if you think you are getting away with not feeling the consequences of what is happening here in the next couple of months or maybe even the next year, I want you to know that these savvy Republicans decided that they were going to delay the impacts of cuts, all of the negative impacts they have backloaded in the bill, which means they have set for them to take effect immediately following the next general election in 2026. So don't think we've gotten away with anything. Their conniving, their willingness to lie, cheat, steal, they have only saved themselves because they think we stupid enough not to understand that this thing is going to have detrimental impacts on all of us. But they don't want you showing up in November of 2026 mad. So they push the effects of all the tens of thousands, tens of thousands of people that they're going to push off of healthcare, and the millions, billions, you would say, that are going to be added to the cost of those of us who do right now afford our own insurance and pay for it. All that they plan to have kick us in the right after they compete to hold the House, hold the Senate, and of course the presidency isn't up in 2026. But all of that, they plan to save by kicking the impacts that are going to hurt all of us the most till right after the next election.
All right. With that,
you toss into the viewer question.
With that, let's hear from the viewer who has some smoke for Angela and me.
Toss.
Good evening from San Diego. My name is DJ Johnson, and I have a question for Angela and for Ms. Cross. Do you guys believe that it could be a fair critique from some of us that sometimes you talk to us as if we are stupid or political malcontents? And I'll use the example of the the migrant protest reservations that our guys expressed. But I believe it was Angela that called some of us selfish because we're not super willing to jump into a front line to protest on behalf of our neighbors. But I remember both of you during November, after Vice President Harris lost the election, basically saying they held with the idea of a rainbow coalition. So do you believe that the echo chamber that y'all guys are living in, do you believe that that echo chamber is starting to position you to be the same people that Malcolm X warned us against in the Ballad of the Bullet? I disagree with the show sometimes, but I do enjoy it, and I'll see you nothing but love. Thank you.
I love
what
that.
What is a malcontent?
Well, we'll get to that, but I just want to say first, thank you so much for submitting that video question. We really appreciate when you take the time to sit down and record a video and ask us a question. And the reason I wanted to make sure that we got to it is because it's a conversation with you guys. We don't mean to talk at you. And we want to highlight when you disagree with us, then drop us a note and we'll talk about it. So first and foremost, nothing but gratitude to you, brother. But to your question, I'll let Angela respond because I know he talked about, your rest is selfish. But I just wanted to say, because Lolo sent us this question earlier, Andrew, can you please put your computer down? Lolo sent us this question earlier. And
What is
I
he
have no
doing?
idea. But
He's trying to hide.
I don't get it. Being distracting.
He's trying to hide.
Anyway, because
He think with bullets about to fly. That's
seriously.
what he was doing. He's putting up a shield.
When Lolo sent us this question, I did
it.
go back and watch, and I don't believe that I said the Rainbow Coalition is dead. But I will say, a lot of outlets will ask me to come on. This thing happened today. Can you, Angela, you remember how it is in that cable news rush? Like you going about today and they're like, come on right now and talk about this thing, or come on tonight. And there is some benefit. I rarely say yes, because there's some benefit to like sitting down, thinking about it, and not jumping out there so quickly every time something happens. After the election, I was surprised by the numbers, and we're still getting updated data. Exit polls are notoriously unreliable. Pew just came out with new voting numbers last week. That Pew Research is an institution that I trust emphatically. So I don't believe I ever said to hell with the Rainbow Coalition. My only point about, and I'm not arrogant enough to tell people what they should or should not be doing. So if I come across that way, it's not my intention. I am arrogant enough to say what people should care about. And when I see comments from people who are looking at the government disappearing people, saying, we don't care, we're minding our business, my point to you is we do care, because that will eventually be us. And we've already seen Black people being detained, deported, and just trying to give information. And I respectfully say, I don't know what echo chamber you're referencing. The only quote from Malcolm X that I know, where he talks about like people in the media making you like hate heroes. And that's not at all. I reject the notion that I'm in that kind of echo chamber. I think all of us, talk to different people and do different things. If I'm coming across like I'm talking to you like you're stupid, which I can do sometimes, I'm sure I don't want to gaslight you and say I don't do that. Sometimes, quite honestly, I do think people are dumb. We had a conversation like that on this. When I see some of the comments from people, I do think, wow, we are eroding our intellect. When I see people, and it's not that, I don't criticize people for not caring, or I do criticize people for not caring. I don't criticize people for not being engaged 100%, but it is some level of frustration. It is looking at society at large that seems to be giving a shoulder shrug and taking selfies and, just not really engaged the way that we once were. So yeah, I hear you. I take all your point. And I was never trying to say, go out there and protest, go out there and be on the front lines. My only notion was we have to give a like we just do. It's our humanity. It's our fellow human beings. And whatever axe is swinging is going to eventually hit us. So that's all, brother. But I appreciate you saying, your disagreement. I really do. Andrew laughing, but I want to hear from Angela first and then let Andrew try to throw some shade because I already feel, whatever. Anyway, Angela.
Well, he started off on the wrong foot with me because he said Angela and Miss Cross. Bitch, what?
He's more familiar with
first
you.
Of all,
he's no more at home with you.
No, well, he's welcome not home because we either everybody welcome home or nobody is, damn it. But I gotta say, I'm irritated by this question because I don't ever mind a disagreement, but let it just be rooted in fact, right? Like you are entitled to your feelings, you're entitled to your perspective, you're entitled to your human story. What you're not about to do is put no words in my mouth, friend. Like we're just not gonna do that. So I never called you to the front line of a protest. Why, brother? I ain't there neither. I'm not on the front lines of a protest. Right now, I don't know what's gonna happen to us on the front lines of a protest. I am engaging in community work, and you're invited there. You've been invited there every single week at State of the People. If you came to one of the places where we've toured, if you tuned in online to a live stream of one of the events we've done, if you tuned into the National Assembly, you would know that Malcolm X's daughter was at the event speaking and endorsing what we're representing. So clearly, we're not that far off of what her daddy represents, friend. So I'm not really sure, Mr. DJ, what you're talking about. You're certainly welcome to always submit your commentary. You don't need an Apple laptop shield, as Andrew is putting up. We build no walls for you or our Latinx brothers and sisters. And here's what I'm also going to tell you. It's already coming to your front door. And this is why we told you we thought you should care. This is why we wanted you to pay attention. This is why we wanted you to not turn a blind eye to the suffering of our neighbors because of this right here. Let's roll the clip.
We also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. People that whack people over the head with a baseball bat from behind when they're not looking and kill them. People that knife you when you're walking down the street. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out of here, too. We had some bad accidents in New York, and they're not accidents. They were done very much on purpose. People being pushed into a subway just before it arrives, going 40 miles an hour, and they're 10 feet away from where the thing is to get pushed right into the face of the subway train, get whacked and killed. And these are sick people. I'd like to get them out of here, too.
So I'm running that clip, and I want y'all to weigh in here, because this is the very thing we're talking about. In one of our Black papers, we had a Black Papers Policy Initiative. It's called From Dred Scott to Deportations. And for those of you who are listening at home and don't know, Dred Scott challenged his right to be a citizen in this country. I believe the case was in, maybe he was born in 1759. I don't know. Before slavery was over. And he had been free, was moved to another state where he would not be free anymore. Dred Scott was told in the Supreme Court decision that he was not a citizen because he was enslaved, and therefore he could not be a citizen. And so birthright citizenship, which we all have because of the 14th Amendment, is now being challenged on every side by this administration. The fact that this man is talking about deporting people who are criminals, and let's be super, super clear about the fact, because some of y'all might be silly enough. Tiff might think you're dumb. I might think you're silly. Some of y'all might be silly enough to think, well, if they're a criminal, they can go. Well, how many of y'all, if you're honest and you throw your bias out the window, know you have someone who's incarcerated in your family? One of your friends. We all know someone who's been wrongfully accused. So Donald Trump saying that someone committed this crime does not make it so. This country has a pattern and practice and deep treacherous history of saying that Black people committed crimes they did not. In fact, the National Registry of Exoneration's annual report says nearly 61% of exonerees are Black. They're exonerated because they did not commit the damn crime. So I want to be clear when I say we know that deportations could also apply to citizens, and those citizens would look like us. Why? Because we're just as other as the Asian. We're just as other as the indigenous person. We're just as other as our Latino brothers and sisters. So maybe I was mad at the Rainbow Coalition, but goddamn it, we need each other now because the math don't math. Well, so get on board.
Let me just say back to the viewer again. We just want to thank you for submitting your question. Even when we disagree, we definitely respect.
Miss Cross, thanks you.
Well, I thank you for taking the time to listen to our show and to submit a question. Because if you didn't tune in and care enough to submit, then we wouldn't be here.
He ended with his
but
love.
if you tune in, can you listen to what we actually said?
He said specifically about your quote saying that your rest is selfish. And he said that we were suggesting that people should be on the front lines of protests, which perhaps...
I did not say that.
But he wasn't saying he said we suggested it. And so I think to be fair and respectful to him, perhaps it did come across like that's what I was saying. And I just wanted to clarify
It's definitely what I said.
to him. Yeah, right.
Oh, you said it from
but
her?
he didn't name you. He name check you. But yeah, but
that was mine.
She's Miss Cross. I'm Angela. You.
But even so, I just want
non-existent.
You behind that wall.
I just want to. Because I think I remember that episode. So many people were a lot of people were agreeing with you, Andrew, and disagreeing with Angela and me. Mm-hmm. So I honor that. I do. I maintain my position in that we have to care. But I honor the disagreement, and I don't want the viewer to think that we're just, like, F you ain't agree. Like, no, we hear you and thank you for articulating your disagreement. And just to clarify, because I think a lot of people probably felt that we were suggesting that, because people, even the comments, they were like, I'm not going out to protest. And that's not what we were suggesting. And just for the record, Angela and I were having a conversation to I think we were in Miami, and I was talking about if people come up to us to say things and about the other. And Angela made a point, like, they better not say nothing about the co-host, blah, blah, blah. And there were many comments that were saying, honestly, guys, it would be disrespectful to Angela to go up to her to say something bad about Tiffany. And I was like, but it's not disrespectful to me, though. It is disrespectful.
Oh, they meant you too. They know that's a given to you. That's
but
a given to you.
the same way where he was like, Angela, I think he was saying that, like, you my girl. Like, I feel you. And Miss Cross, like, you a stranger.
I don't know what this brother was saying.
That's how I took it.
I think he put some respect on your name, and I'm still mad at him because I don't know what a malcontent means.
He
but
said
I look
a
forward to him
malcontent.
sending a
malcontent.
Yeah.
Is that what he
A
said?
malcontent.
Okay,
But
I thought he said
thank him
malcontent. I'm here arguing with Nick.
for the video.
Well, let me tell you what
Tiffany thanks you. No, Miss Cross thanks you for your video. I'll thank you when you come back with some.
Native
Okay,
Hip Hop
Andrew.
thanks you.
But do come back.
Welcome
But do
home.
come back.
Welcome home.
Welcome
home.
home. That's how you know you home. If
No,
we
what I was
debate,
going to
you
say,
know
I don't know all these hating comments that y'all get, but I know when I'm in the grocery store, I'm around, these folks come up to me and say, do you think I could get an autograph of Tiffany and Angela? And I'm like, it's a good thing I love these women.
You be like, hello.
Because you sure didn't ask for mine.
But they know
but it's
you.
great.
They know you.
No, what's great is, honestly, y'all get a lot of love around here. Like, I love, but Tiffany and Angela, those my girls. They're my girls. So,
Tiffany, what he's not telling you is in Jackson, I almost got ran out of Tougaloo because Andrew left without telling them people bye.
Yeah, you said
I'm
on
not,
the
we're
show.
not
Didn't
going
somebody
there.
run to the airport? Didn't somebody
I'm
follow
done.
you all the way to
I'm
the
just
airport?
done with it. We had to revisit that. See, she put me in a
Okay.
situation and then I got to blame. But listen, one more topic. Do we have time?
Yes, we have time. I want to quickly get to this, and I want to make the point that Angela, you will correct me if I'm misspeaking, but I do want to make the point that Angela was saying. We're going to talk briefly about the Diddy trial. And I think we're talking about this because this is such a monumental decision that was not, I think as a community, we didn't look at it just about Diddy, but collectively how we navigate the Me Too movement, the criminal justice system, our community, just everything. I think Angela made a good point earlier that is this a distraction? We have this huge bill happening and it's breaking news, that the verdict came down in the Diddy case. And I respect your opinion, Angela. I don't want to talk about that because that's, what is the real impact of it? This bill has a more devastating impact on all of us than this Diddy trial. But we're going to talk about it a little just because, Andrew, I'm curious your thoughts as a man, but I will say as a woman, I did not listen to every detail of this trial. I didn't read every detail. I couldn't stomach the details. But I will just say, and I hope that our viewers can honor me and give me a little bit of grace in this because I have not had a lot of time to process and really think about this. But it's really challenging for me to wish for a Black man to spend the rest of his life in prison. It just is. It feels uncomfortable to celebrate sending a Black man to the white man's prison. I also balance that with the incredibly monstrous, heinous, disgusting behavior that we saw, that was detailed before us. And from a legal perspective, which I don't understand at all, I was telling these guys earlier, I was asking all the lawyers, how do you feel? And people are like, I ain't no trial lawyer. You should ask a trial lawyer. Because I was like, what about this? And did they make the RICO case? And they're like, yeah, I don't really do that. So I didn't have a chance to get a lot of response from trial lawyers about this. But I'm just trying to balance, yes, I feel so yes, this man, they made the case that, yes, this man was a monster to these women. I don't know if we start locking up monsters for lifetime sentences. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It looks like Diddy will serve some jail time. I think the most important thing to keep in mind are the victims. The people who were victimized by him, a lot of people, who were sexual assault victims themselves have come out, written op-eds, shared their thoughts on the way they felt he was grooming Cassie. A lot of people on the other side felt like, well, they were complicit because they were setting it up. which I think is such a thought to have, to be honest with you. People are so quick to attack women, and, or attack Cassie for not leaving, but not attack Diddy for being a monster in these cases. So I guess I'm okay. It doesn't really matter if I'm okay because I'm not the victim here. I think, again, the victims are who matters. But I wasn't one of those people that's like, send him to jail forever. I don't know how to deal with that. He will get out of prison, probably never make another dime. He's on some level gonna have a punishment. And I just hope y'all give me a little bit of grace because I support women, and there were Black women who he harmed as well. So
Alleged.
I stand with allegedly. Thank you. Allegedly. Well, there are people who he harmed.
There is what we see with our own eyes. Correct. Right. There is, and by the way, also admitted to by his attorneys. And if that were 100%. A charge around domestic abuse, that may have been a different story.
And I'm in no way defending any of that behavior. I would never. As a woman, as a Black woman, I'm not defending that at all. All I'm saying is I'm never going to be a person that celebrates sending our folks to prison. That's not to say what he deserves. I just don't feel like I'm the arbiter of who deserves what, and I can't.
We are, though. Our justice system,
legally,
which we are not,
right.
You're right, very well represented in, we are not. What you were expressing, Tiffany, around just sort of the nuance and the conflict that exists within your being is, I think, you're calling out something that all of us, and I would just say very specifically, I think Black folks experience in these kinds of high-profile cases that center Black men. And even if it were a Black woman, but largely what we've seen, let's go back to Bill Cosby. A lot of us were like, okay, maybe I don't know what happened, but if some wrong happened, I can't understand why I can't watch the Cosby Show anymore. I can't understand why I can't
the Cosby
say.
Show every day.
No, right, but you remember networks took it off.
I remember.
There were all these apps. You could no longer access it. I remember telling my own personal story of being motivated to want to go to college because of what was exampled and what was modeled there, and to be able to separate the personality of a character on television from the man or the woman. In real life. I mean, there are Black actors and actresses I've been around, and I have referred to them by the most popular role that I remember they played, right?
Dr. Huxtable has nothing to do with Bill Cosby for me.
Correct. For us, right?
Yeah.
But for a lot of folks,
too much to the Black community.
They conflate it. Yeah. And then blame us for wanting to still watch television from it, right? We know that in certain instances where we may have felt intuitively that a person may have been guilty, but we're also pleased that we didn't turn them over into a lifetime of the heinous system created, quite frankly, just for us.
Even because you brought it up, Andrew, even in the Bill Cosby case, yes, this man likely harmed women. The evidence supported it. Fine. However, legally, they lied to him. If you tell me you testify and I'm going to give you immunity, you won't be charged with this. And then you turn around and charge, then yes, you do have to let him out of jail. That is the way the legal system.
It's a corrupt system.
Right. It is. It's a corrupt system.
And I think at the bottom, at the soul of this, is a lot of suspicion around corruption. I will tell you, when I saw the charges, and I didn't pay any attention, I have to tell you, to the trial. I didn't read the news on it. It just wasn't, unfortunately, it wasn't at the medium level or any level for that matter of what I was putting attention on. That's not to say that it wasn't larger in our culture, very important for what was exposed. But I do remember when the charging document came down, the indictment came down, and I kept thinking, one, let me just say out loud, I am highly suspicious of the federal all systems of justice, but the federal system of justice very particularly, okay? I've been on the other side of that. I've read indictments that included Wholesale lies, the whole goddamn thing, all 20 however pages of it. But folks who were in the streets were reading it like it was a production of the local newspaper, fact checked and, wholly accounted for. And then the judge says, you realize that is their opinion of what they believe occurred. And then there is what the defendant says what is and has occurred. And in this courtroom, I'm going to tell you what you can and cannot listen to and what you can and cannot consider when you go back to deliberate this decision. When I saw racketeering, my understanding of it, I was like, oh, well, hey, good luck in proving this big grand scheme enterprise. And then I thought back to my charging document, which, they accused me of having a grand scheme of an enterprise. So brilliant and with so much time to orchestrate and mummy people all over the place toward my benefit of $30,000, I guess that's what they thought, and I don't want to compare the two from a fact pattern. I'm simply saying where my suspicion of the judicial system begins is it began long before my own experience. But my own experience was a true testament to the fact that these folks know how to tell a story. That's what I knew.
And then this hard, though.
I mean, then there are the things that we know and we see with our own eyes that we can make judgment about. So when we think about the Cassie video, for instance, and how we felt inside and how we deplored that and how we believe that there ought to be a consequence. Well, guess what, prosecutors? Maybe in a state where you can prosecute domestic violence and the statute of limitations doesn't exist, which in many states, those statutes of limitations on such crimes were lifted during the height of the Me Too era. Then that's one thing. But you wanted this jury to believe that this whole enterprise was set up to achieve a thing. The other thing that really bothered me about what I have assessed from the very peripheral look that I've taken at this case, which is all of the loading up. If I read one more thing about baby oil, I wanted to puke. Because what it does is it takes individuals' lifestyles and then conflates it with other what is truly justifiable legal wrongdoing. And then the idea is to then, because it is not like what we do, it is not very familiar to what you and your house and your household and what your experiences have been. It is wrong. It is deplorable. It is illegal. It is immoral. It is all these things. And I'm thinking, this ain't got shit to do with the thing that is being accused. And so you've now bought in all of this stuff to make me muddy and dirty and not like you and not publicly acceptable, so that people distance themselves in such a way that they're never going to see my humanity when they go back into a jury box, into a jury room for deliberations. Again, this is yes about the Puffy case. This is also mostly about the greater criminal justice system and largely a system that cooperates to make something look a certain way, to introduce certain evidence, to introduce certain voices and perspectives, so that in a jury room, those things get taken in. And because I don't understand it, it must be wrong. Because it's out of the society's mores, it must be wrong. And so that stuff, I just think if you got a case, bring it clean. If you got a case, you're accusing me of a set of things, bring your evidence, you bring it clean through the door. And when they try to get too fancy, when they try to do too much, they underestimate the value of, I think, considerate people sitting in a room, looking at the instructions that they have to follow and arriving at a decision. And in our system of justice, that decision is a binding one.
I just think it's a difference, though. Like, I hear you, and I think if we're not talking about Diddy, then, we can.
But it applies to him, too.
But I don't know. I think what went into this case was a lot of his own displayed behavior. I think legally, yes, you're making a point about the justice system. But also, I don't know that I can say that he's the victim in this. You know,
I'm not calling him a victim. I wouldn't
I
do
know.
that, and I definitely
I
don't want
know
to paint
you are not calling him a
Yeah.
victim, but the way you're speaking about the justice system, I'm making a clear distinction that you're talking about the justice system, and then there is the Diddy case where there were some flaws in the charges that they brought. I just think this gets kind of to our conversation we had last week or the week before about protecting Black men, or protecting us, really. But, you know, the conversation about protecting Black men. When we start to protect Black men to the harm of women, that's when it's a challenge. And I do see so many comments, particularly when the Cassie video first came out, all these women just shit on her. And it was like, oh, she lying and she waited to now to bring it up and I don't believe her. And then the video came out and the New York Times article read like a timestamp of that video. And then most people's opinions changed, but there were still people. And I would say it's probably less than 1% of women, maybe their comments, just the toxicity of it all rise to the top. But still the people who are saying, well, they were into it and well, they were setting it up and they did this. Who gives a shit? You know, like that doesn't make him the victim in a situation where he was being a monster to these women. Like, I get a little frustrated with that. Or even the idea, I had a friend who I won't name out of respect for his privacy, but a friend who had similar accusations. And he was my friend. And I could honestly say to him, privately, like, yeah, I think you made some up decisions here. And I think you did cause these women some harm. But I could also say, yeah, and I also think it's an attack on them, like trying to get you. That doesn't excuse you or the harm that you caused these women. And I don't know. I think that's where I am. You know, the verdict came out this week. And like I said, I would just ask the audience for some grace as we're working through this. I don't want anybody to misunderstand and think that I'm sitting here trying to defend Diddy. I'm not. I don't believe Andrew's trying to do that. I think you're simply pointing out flaws in the justice system and the complicated perceptions we can have when it comes to these types of charges being brought, for one, to anybody, and two, the women who are harmed. I mean, you know, there were Black women, like I said, who he harmed, and other people anecdotally who I know who have had incidents that I won't share because I'm not a reporter. I wasn't reporting on this and it would be irresponsible of me to say so. But enough people anecdotally who have had really negative experiences with him. And so if there's a message, I would just say, I hope that a lot of these men with money and power change their behavior and know, like, these incidents, it's, you know, from freak offs to like all these things, just change your behavior. But there have been a lot of comments of people asking, you know, y'all haven't said anything about this or we want to hear. I think there are people who want to hear and appreciate our perspective and helping them think through these things too. It certainly is not as important as the bill because the bill is more urgent. But I think there is some interest and a need for community conversation around this. We've certainly talked about things that I don't have a strong interest in, but out of respect for the viewers, I can certainly sit here and listen and participate in it. And I don't think that's to be honest with you, I don't think that's too big of an ask. I respect that, you know, we all don't want to weigh in on things. But I think this is an important conversation and I'm glad we had it.
I won't weigh in on important and non-important because I have certainly sat in listening, shot, and participation of some of the most nonsensical things out there, but we've had to do it because it's been in the culture. This, however, I will say is one of those, it's one of those things that is absolutely tough because you are, right now we are wrestling out loud with our thoughts, feelings, and emotions that don't always fit congruent with each other. I mean, I'm sensing conflict all over my own thoughts about some of this, right? And I don't have to have proximity to a woman to know what is right and wrong and how you treat a person, period. I don't, that doesn't have to be my context. She being a Black woman or somebody else or that it, no. How do you treat, if you hit my son across the face, right? Unprovoked, you gonna have some issues with me, right? So and again, I'm talking about my situation, unprovoked, this is that and the third. But there are also people who conclude, you know what? Adults make adult decisions. I believe and I trust adults, consenting adults, to be able to sit together and to arrive at a thing that they want to do and to do it willingly betwixt each other. And I don't have room to make excuses for the various motivations of why, right? There are folks who would, barrel this whole decision down on one person's actions and completely excuse the actions of another. There are some of us who, do the reverse for a different party. And likely the scenario is that, a bunch of bad decisions got made by a bunch of people. And now what we are considering, however, is not a bunch of bad decisions, but when those decisions crossed a legal line that is provable, that should then result in the legal consequences and penalties. So say a jury of your peers. And a jury of peers went to the courthouse and they reckoned with these questions. They gave weeks at a time away from their family and their jobs. And they listened, they took it in, unlike me, who had to operate on this from whatever leapt off the pages of the internet, which is certainly not the reflection of all the things that go down in that room. So I have to trust and believe that those folks did what was merited of them. That can still result in us having a very wide, different set of opinions about how this thing ought to have come down. And in all truth, I really have issues with a lot of this whole thing, and I'm trying to be able to sense this through a lens that is outside of just my own. But my own experience weighs heavily on how I see the system and all parts of it and all of us who have to cooperate in it. If there was wrongdoing done on behalf of Diddy, you heard the attorneys for him say, my client did wrong, and if you were prosecuted on this, we give way to that issue. And you have folks on the other side who made accusations and claims that suggested otherwise, and that all had to be ferreted through. What I hope the takeaway is from us, from many, for folks, one is have the conversation in a safe enough environment where you feel like you can be completely honest with where you are, how you got there, and you don't make silly excuses about why it is a thing went away, a thing went, without having scrutinized it, without having interrogated it enough for yourself, because that just leads to a perpetuation of a bunch of behaviors that we all as a society need to suspend with. I also hope that people will lower their judgment radar a little bit, meaning your judgment on other people, and determine that just because a thing isn't my thing doesn't make it an illegal thing or a bad thing for that matter. So I am going to withhold judgment on whether group sex is a bad thing or a good thing, and just state that group sex took place. And if in law and your state, they prosecute you for group sex, then write the damn crime, bring me the evidence, put that before a jury in its admissible form, and let them decide. But if you're going to swing from the rafters on your charging document, and you're going to bring things toward me that I know and most reasonable people could conclude did not occur, you have to deal with that as well. And I blame, in some ways, on the prosecution, the fact that there are going to be parts of this narrative that are going to be understood by whole groups of people and draw them to the conclusion that my life is not as important, that my gender renders me subjugate to a man, or from a man's perspective that, you know what, it doesn't matter what you really did because you're forever going to be burdened by what they said you did. And you'll always be judged through that lens. So there are a lot of offenses that can be taking place here, a lot. I just think we ought to be able to have a reasonable conversation, admit that we don't know what the complete and the right answers are, and to also say that we can have contradictions in our thoughts and in our feelings based off of how we approach a thing through what lens by which we see it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this, I don't see any winners. There are no winners here.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of hurt and pain that folks are going to have to process. And that's what makes this conversation one that is conversation worthy, because its implications reach beyond just the parties involved. They send a message to a whole group of people that the people who were involved and implicated here will never know the names of, where they live, where they come from, or their stories.
Well, I hear all that, Andrew. I just want to say he was not just charged with having group sex. But
of course.
I know what you're saying. I completely 100% understand you. I'm making this point for the audience because I don't want the audience to misunderstand what you're saying. And sometimes in our nuance, I think people aren't necessarily capable of wrapping their arms around
and I appreciate
the nuance.
I appreciate that.
My thoughts are with the victims, the survivors of some of this terrible behavior, not just the people that Diddy victimized, but all survivors of people who were victimized in this way. Again, we love our Black men, but not to the extent where I'm willing to let Black women get harmed and say nothing or defend the abuser in favor of him and not my sisters who have been abused. So,
and is it possible to evaluate this case based off of the individuals involved and the individual's actions rather than them be a representative of all Black men or of Black women?
No, yeah. And again, this is not about all Black men. This is,
No, I know. And this is why I wanted to say that, Tiff, because I think this is how we all end up squaring off.
Yeah.
And going to the corners is when it is excusing bad behavior of Black men at the risk of the lives, livelihoods, well-being of Black women. It is somebody or somebody's made bad decisions that have hurt, this or that, right? You name it. I'm leaving it blank because we all got listeners who feel a different way. You name where you feel that offense took place, but that's the perpetrator by name. That's the victim by name, vice versa. And let that be that. I don't want us to, what I know often happens is the projection of the actions. And because a person fits that profile, that the actions taken by the person of that profile reflect on everybody in that profile.
I think that's a fair point to make. And it's so hard trying to have these conversations and, in a very careful way. But I also don't want Black men to feel admonished here. We're talking about Diddy and other people like him who engage in shitty behavior and the women who they harm. This is not casting a dark shadow over all Black men. Obviously, we have an amazing Black man on the show with us. And most Black men do not behave in this manner. But we thought it important to at least talk about this and have some sort of guided discussion around what's happening as you guys are trying to navigate your space. So Nick has been telling us to wrap. So we do need to talk about what we want to talk about on the mini pod and give people calls to action. But thank you, Angie, for your perspective on that, because I thought I just appreciated your nuanced perspective on the criminal justice system and what's happening.
We are noting that some of the accusations made against Sean Combs are yet to be proven in a court of law.
I guess my call to action, though, is, I feel a little bit, I guess I'm growing exhausted with the attacks on Black women. And this, the Diddy case services a lot of that. Most Black men in my life are amazing, wonderful human beings. They look at these, people among the podcast bros and, the manosphere with great condolence that they don't, have a healthy relationship with Black women, from their moms to sisters to partners, etc. So I think I would ask that we just lay the fuck off Black women, and that goes to our brethren. I'm not appealing to white folks because I just don't know if that even matters. We've been made the enemy of the country. But it also goes to other Black women. I think these comments about, what women should have done and how women are, I think it's so self-hating and f***ed up. So, yeah, my request would be to offer grace That's my CTA. Be careful with that digital anonymity when you're shitting on someone else's experience, or just saying something ugly. If you wouldn't say it to that person's face, then don't type it in a comment, because other survivors see you and they hear that, and it discourages people from coming forward to give their testimony about it. So that's my CTA. I kick it to you, brother. If you don't have
I don't
Angela,
have one
Okay.
other than to say happy 4th. And if you're spending it out, be safe.
Perfect.
I do mean that. I sound dredged, like it took a hard time. I do mean I wish people a
Be safe.
good
Yeah.
time and be safe.
Okay, that's a good one.
For those of you who will be in New Orleans, we will be live on stage at Essence for our live show. We started doing this with the Essence Fest last year. We will be there on Sunday, this coming weekend, at 3 p.m. Central Time. So we hope to see you. For those of you who we miss, we will make sure that you see that show and can hear that show in short order. And so we're so grateful for your time and for listening. Let me go to this. As always, we want to remind everyone to leave us a review and subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all podcast platforms and YouTube. And did you know that Native Land Pod is part of a podcast is part of a podcast network called Reason Choice Media? Jamel Hill is on the RCM network with her show, Spolitics, and SE Cup on her show, Off the Cup. Be sure to check those out, and don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our text or email lists on nativelandpod.com. We are Angela Rye, Tiffany Cross, and Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all. There are sadly 488 days until midterm elections, and God, we hope we still have them.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rye, Gillum, and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth, even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Listen to Native Land Pod on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.